All right, we're all set then.
Oh.
Getting ahead of yourself?
Is Derek coming today?
Yeah, he's gonna get a little late. He's trying to get out of the meeting right
It happens when you're in charge.
now. Yeah, I know. So that would make the big bucks.
I don't make the big
Ready to go live?
Yep.
We're on the air.
All right, great. All right, good evening. Good evening, residents of Litchfield, and welcome to the February 21st, 2018 school board meeting. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you have any revisions, Superintendent?
I do not.
And there was no non-public on January 24th, so no non-public actions. Presentation recognitions. Don't believe we have any of those either. So next is LMS enrollment schedule plan. Mr. Leckliter is going to talk about some direction as far as not lack of, but reduction in 5th and 6th grade enrollment.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. It's always fun to talk about the middle school programming. It's not fun to talk about declining enrollment, but I wanted to just start off because this was sort of embedded into my principal's report about a month ago. We had some snow days and stuff. If I may just start off with just a couple of quick accolades. I wanted to recognize we just got our scores today for the Solo Ensemble Festival our kids went to. And band and chorus. Chorus, as you know now, is a growing program. All A's, both band and chorus. So congratulations to those students. We had a number of students get up very early on a Saturday a couple weeks ago to go to Solo Ensemble. Congratulations. I also want to recognize today our Krispy Kreme orders were due for the DC trip. We usually average about 1,500 dozen donuts. And Mark Cloutier has volunteered again to pick up the donuts that night. So I just talked to him the other day. He rents a box truck, goes down there. It is at the Mohegan Sun, I will say that, but he's been willing to do that now for a number of years.
And you have a tally?
I don't have a final tally yet. I'm guessing somewhere in that range, though, 1,500. I think we're going to be somewhere on there. And then the last thing I just want to mention, a really neat thing came out of one of our chat meetings at our school over the last few weeks. We were looking at just some groups of students and some students that need some more support that are not necessarily identified kids, but just kids that need some more support and some opportunity for those kids. And so we've partnered with Campbell High School with their Honor Society for tutoring in our library. As you know, we do now, we have library open hours a few days a week. And so we have some students that come in, science, math students, and then humanities students that come in and work with some of our kids. It's a great opportunity, both for them and for our students. So just want to thank Campbell, thank Denise Freeman, their advisor, for helping coordinate that with us, and it's moving forward very positively for both sides. The only thing with this room is, do I have more hair in person than on camera?
They're getting you. Yeah.
Somebody
Yep,
saw
right
my video shot. They said, "Tom, you is that?" Yeah. I apologize for the glare back there. Okay, so I'm going to start off with really just kind of a context to what's happening at the middle school. You've, as the board, heard this over the budget season. The budget committee certainly heard this during the presentations there. But just to sort of provide a context and give some updates on some of our numbers and what we're looking at over the next several months and planning. So depending on whether we're using NESDEC, which is what we used last year, or the School Board Association projections, we're right in the range of about 405 to 413. The NESDEC last year was 413. In general, so at the middle school, you've heard me talk about the content specialist model, and we believe that is really a critical model as kids go from an elementary model where they're learning to read, and there's a lot of support around that, to now reading to learn in content areas. Content reading becomes very challenging for students as they go up through the grades 5 through 8. The content becomes more intense, more challenging, and the responsibility of the teacher to stay current and to in grades 7 and 8, they're required to have a specific certification in their content area or highly qualified status. That becomes really critical. So there's a lot of training that happens for professional development and things that happens for our teachers. For example, we've just, with your support, unrolled Project Lead the Way over the last couple of years. We now have 6 or 7, depending on how you look at our computer science class. There's an A and a B there. Classes for those areas: science, tech ed, and computer programming, and with that, a lot of professional development for those folks. As you know, for math we use Big Ideas and Envisions 2.0. Likewise, a lot of in-depth, significant training for them. And so on. So the content areas require a lot of in-depth training. We also see great results when it comes to our specific, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but when you go through the 4 years of middle school with those content-specific areas. And it allows us, just today we had department meetings, it allows us the opportunity to look at assessments, to look at the data, and really focus in on each content area. So just in general, that's the model we have. You probably know several years back we transitioned. We were looking at our 5th grade, and we were looking at feedback we were hearing and just performance of the students, and wanted to look at 5th grade, being that 5th grade is a part of our middle school community. We wanted to make sure that they were all included in that programming. And so we moved to that content specialist model with 5th grade. It's gone really well. The teachers have done a lot of work to become, when you're doing transition, there's a lot of responsibility in the first few weeks of the year. So not only is there that content piece, but there's also just that huge transition piece going from when you're going into a new building. There's the transition, but 4th to 5th grade. So what we've seen is, as kids travel through from 4th to 5th and then into 6th grade, when they go to 6th grade, they're much more acclimated to the model. So with that said, 5th through 8th grade more or less follows that model, and students travel to their content areas. The other real critical piece to our program at the middle school is our team approach, and if you've had kids go through the school, you know that that is our infrastructure, really important structure, not only for the academics, but also for what we're trying to do with our core values, and that is develop good citizens at the school. So you hear the motto, do your best, and we do that in a very team-oriented way as kids go through the middle school years in those 4 years. I think as I look at this, and again, I know you've heard me say this before, but as the principal of the middle school, I am going to point out the fact that in terms of funding around the state, and the Department of Education releases a report every year. They just released their report last year on the most recent per student costs, and I know this was discussed a little bit at deliberative session. So if you look at the state average for middle schools, and it's in the chart, should have an updated chart there. It is $14,740, and we are at $13,432 per student cost for a delta of $1,308. When you multiply that out by our enrollment, even if, let's say, 400 students, it's a delta of over $500,000. So I'm very proud of what we've been doing at the middle school. We felt nothing but support from the school board, from the district, and things like the one-to-one model in the 8th grade, the Project Lead the Way, all of the support around Learning Commons. There's a lot happening right now at our school, and I think we have a lot to be proud of there. My concern is that delta, and it continues to sort of widen each year there, and The good news is that our performance has stayed very consistent over those years. So if you use School Digger, I know that was used in a presentation at deliberative session. The trend line is very positive for the middle school. When you look at just sort of the rankings there, so we are the 8th lowest state in terms of per student cost, but we are in the top 15% for performance. And I think that says a lot to the staff and the work that they're doing in the classrooms, the teachers, and the work they're doing with the kids. The other thing that I wanted to point out is, and again, just trying to provide a big context here, is our identified students for special education. And I know you've heard some of this through the presentation as well over the budget season. So we have, I have a table in the back that actually points out grade by grade the percentage of identified students. And as you can see, the average is roughly 14, 15, 16%, somewhere in that range of students identified. There is a large number in grade 4, which is the incoming 5th grade next year, 28.7%, which is definitely something that as we prepare, and that's what we're talking about tonight, as we prepare particularly for next fall, we are looking at how our staff, the capacity that we have, will meet the needs and provide support to those students. In addition, there's 504s that require accommodations in addition to that. So, that's an important piece to planning and looking at programming and how we're going to provide a model that will meet the needs of middle school students. The next thing on my packet here is team configuration. So I'll get right into this so that you just get kind of an idea of what the impact is with 2 reductions. And in terms of the reductions, when we look at numbers, so and I also have that laid out in table 1, table 2 in the back. We have currently in grade 5 we have 80 students. In grade 4 there are 87. That projection is, depending on which weighted average, is anywhere between 87 and in the low 90s. So it's hard to nail down those numbers. It is sort of a moving number, a moving target. Just to give you an idea, our 6th grade last year netted 10 students over the summer. So we registered 13 students. We withdrew 3 for a net of 10. So those numbers, and that doesn't happen every year. That was a large number. But just to give you an idea, when you're talking about a class of 87 to 90 students, the cutoff for the 5th grade in terms of board policy at 23-to-1 ratio is right around 92. Once we get into the 93, 94 range, we're right in the 23 point something student, which is a hard calculation. So, it's right around that range of 23, 22, 23-to-1 for next year. So when we look at potentially a reduction next year, I can't make a presentation like this without stating that I have concerns about how that will impact when we look at special education and we look at our content specialist model and things like that. I can't help but have some concerns about that. With that being said, we have done an analysis of the competencies, the indicators, the curriculum, and how to best meet the needs of students so that we're not completely blowing up our curriculum model and everything. And by the way, 3rd grade has 90 students right now. So if over the next 2 years the 90 turns into 95 or 100, let's just say, that becomes a very different conversation, and that takes on a very different look over the next 2 years. But with those numbers in the current 4th grade and next year's 5th grade, we would be looking at shifting our 5-teacher model in grades 5 and 6 to a 4-teacher model, which we have done in the past. The The challenge there is, quite honestly, especially with 5th and 6th grade and where they are developmentally with that learning to read, reading to learn thing, is our ELA curriculum. We want to make sure that there are many ELA competencies and indicators, and we want to make sure that we are being thoughtful and strategic around how we're going to meet the needs with one ELA teacher on the team. And so what we're proposing is a content literacy model, which would be each teacher teaches their content area, and then they also teach content literacy. So the intent of the ELA curriculum is that the ELA teachers are the ELA competencies are not only taught in ELA class. You don't only read and write in English language arts class. That should translate to social studies, science, and other content areas. And that was the design of that curriculum guide. So in making that shift to content literacy, we really put a focus on content area reading and writing. And I think when you look at the shift in informational text and informational writing, in addition to argumentative text, if you will, and writing, the shift from grade 5 through 8 shifts pretty dramatically, where the requirement is much heavier on informational and argumentative natured literacy as they go up through the years. So we think that given the situation, we think that that is a model that would work. It's a model that we have used. If you were here back when we did content reading, that was the name of the class then. And it's going to take quite a bit of work on the teams to look at the competencies and exactly how those competencies will be delivered in the content literacy class. But it is a model that we feel will address the ELA indicators and the ELA curriculum. The next page has sort of an overview of the unified arts. And for those who have kids at the middle school, I think the heart and soul of a lot of what we do at the middle school
We all do.
lands, yeah, you guys all do, but people on TV. The heart and soul of the middle school model, a lot of it lands in the unified arts classes. You know, the music program in our district, but the music program at the middle school speaks for itself, as you heard tonight. What we've done with STEAM programming over the last 3 years, from when I came in 18 years, I cannot believe where we are today with our STEAM programming, our computer programming, our computer coding, our robotics program in the tech ed program, design and modeling. It's amazing what they're doing in there. So I think the UAs are the areas where we've really been able to put a focus on application in some of these things when it comes to the technology, when it comes to the computer program and the coding stuff. We see a lot of application in the UAs. One of the challenges we've had over the past couple of years as we're moving toward the Learning Commons model, and one of the things Plymouth State University pointed out in their report for us, was that you've really got to reduce or eliminate the requirement for the librarian or the Learning Commons specialist, or whatever we're going to call it now. I don't like using the term librarian anymore, but reduce or eliminate the responsibilities to teach a library class. That's kind of an old model. And so the Learning Commons is a very busy place. It's a place where the specialists should be working with teams, working with teachers, integrating things that they're doing in classrooms into the Learning Commons model. Kids should be coming in and out of there, interacting, collaborating, and all that, and it's great stuff. And we've done a lot over the last 2 years with that. But this reduction in enrollment does give us an opportunity to reduce or eliminate her responsibilities to teach in the next 1 to 2 years. The other thing it does is I was asked the other day by a community member, she was asking me about the middle school, and she said, what's one of the number one things you hear parents asking for at the middle school? And the first thing came to my mind was more UAs. I'm constantly being asked, why can't my kid have this UA more frequently every year or every, and the answer to that is we only have so many teachers. We only have so many sections that they can teach. And, I'm pretty well aware of middle school scheduling. I collaborate with a lot of administrators around the state on different types of schedules around middle schools. If you remember back, I went to what they call a scheduling rodeo. It's not as fun as it sounds. A few years back, and out of that, we sort of restructured how we approach the Unified Arts programming. So I think there is an opportunity there to reduce some of those teaching responsibilities. The other area that I think is a real critical need at the school, two areas actually, but one of them is technology integration. And I think as we go to a one-to-one model next year, that puts a huge strain and responsibility, it's a good thing, on our staff. And the 8th grade team has done a phenomenal job of rolling that in the middle of the year. Next year, that's going to be a 5 through 8 initiative, and it's a big initiative in addition to some other things that we're doing. So I think over the next couple of years, I'd like to try to free up a little bit more time for technology integration, so that we can have that in the classrooms with a specialist who can focus and partner with teachers on that. Table 1 on the back is an overview of the schedule for next year. You've heard me talk about scheduling being a puzzle, and it really is. I'm trying to make this as straightforward and simple to follow as possible. And Miss Thayer is here tonight. She is our scheduling guru, so I want to recognize Martha. She does a lot of great work around the nitty-gritties of our schedule. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the number of content teachers. The rotation is pretty straightforward in grades 5 and 6 to what I suggested, and then the Unified Arts. So to try to make some sense out of the Unified Arts rotation, so music and library, our semester courses. As I mentioned, the frequency thing, we right now cannot increase the frequency to quarter, because we only have so much capacity there. So music and library semester classes, phys ed, health, FACS, our quarter classes, and band and chorus are full year. And that's the other thing that makes planning somewhat of a challenge, is that those are elective classes. Our band is very large. And as kids go through the middle school, the numbers increase in the band. So we might start off with a band of 15, 20 kids, and that might grow to 40 to 50 kids by the end of 8th grade. If they elect for band, then that can impact some of the other UA numbers and how things operate. So similar to the high school in some ways with that, until we really know what students are going to select, and as they come in new students, they kind of get into that program. We're also seeing growth in our choral program, so that will have an impact on how the UAs really will look. So band and chorus are full year. And then in grade 6, again, the same content rotation. Unified Arts, you can see we have the Tech Ed STEAM class there. We have design and modeling, and we have automation and robotics, which we were able to integrate this year, which is going really, really well. But that one's a lot of work to integrate into both of those units. Believe it or not, in a half year, it's a lot of work to integrate those. Computer programming is also a semester course. Health is a quarter, actually. Phys ed is a quarter, arts a quarter, and FACS is a semester. And then band and chorus, still full year all the way through. So that gives you an overview of what we're looking at for next year. In terms of the teaching blocks, there are still 5 on there. And as I say, the challenge is going to be giving the teachers an opportunity to have that professional learning time to analyze those competencies for ELA and really look at, we have Newsella this year. That's a resource that we're using. You support it.
We use it. We love it.
Fantastic. It really is it's a current event site, but it's a lot more than that. This year we were able to get a license for it. which gives you a lot more opportunity than the free version. And it does a lot with informational text. It does a lot with the nonfiction text. It has writing prompts in it. So it really is it's a pretty dynamic program there. So we're integrating that this year. The reading specialist has done a lot of work with that and has done some PD for our staff on that this year. So that's the overview. Anyone who sees this that is familiar with the middle school in terms of like in-house might look at this and just the puzzle of scheduling have questions. So I'm sure from where you sit, there's some questions. Is there anything I can answer specifically about?
So the board, you only did this because the board asked you to do it, right? You came up with this plan because the board asked you to come up with a plan to reduce 2 teachers. You don't actually support this, do you?
So that's a tough question, Derek.
It is, but I'm being honest.
Do I support? So if I
I don't
had
think
my-
dropping 2 teachers and dropping whatever it is, content literacy or reading is
Do I think it's the
actually
best,
a good idea.
the absolute best model to have 4 teachers instead of 5 for each content specialist area? No.
It's a terrible idea, right?
Yeah.
It's not something I would, I mean, I just think that,
And this is probably more for the board than for you, but like looking at this plan, like our job as a district is to prepare children to be, prepare them for careers, prepare them to be good people, good citizens, like, and we've been so focused on STEAM and technology and math and driving stuff forward, which is extremely important, don't get me wrong, but underneath that, all of that is the ability to communicate information and read and understand information, and this sets us back from that.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, then why don't we have 6 teachers in the other grades then?
Which grades?
The other grades.
Well, I think,
There's only 5 teachers.
I know.
Like when I
but-
was in middle school, I had math and language arts and science and reading and geography. I had
No, I mean
those
in
5
the
core
other
subjects.
grades. If we're worried
Well-
about,
I think maybe we need, it's worth looking into, but I have grave concerns about cutting educational time on ELA.
It's fundamental.
It is fundamental.
Being able to
and-
communicate and understand information is
Right.
fundamental to everything you do.
Right, and I agree, we've been pushing, to improve our math scores, improve our reading, our reading scores are great, but there's no way that without that instruction time that they're gonna stay that way.
so I think that the content literacy model is a model that will, it's a different model. It puts the focus on the content area first, and the literacy is embedded in there. It's not a completely foreign concept, but it absolutely, you're right. When you look at the number of competencies and indicators in the ELA area,
It's huge.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. And I think that particularly at those lower grades, we see that, GMS does a great job. They have a great reading program and a great literacy program down there. But as I said, as kids get into the middle school and we're preparing them for high school where the content reading becomes even more of a challenge, those ELA competencies are a critical foundation. It's not just reading and writing anymore either. There's a lot of presentation, there's speaking, listening. It's a robust curriculum, and there's a lot of different components, and a lot of ELA it's not just a one-night homework assignment and then come back the next day. It's we've been making, I think in the district, we're making great strides towards performance assessments and performance tests. That takes a lot of planning and a lot of time for the teachers, and it's a lot of for the kids. There's multi-steps to that, so it's a very challenging, ELA is a very challenging area to deliver instruction in because it's very in-depth.
I think we've been caught up on the numbers because as this 5th grade group now has moved from 1st grade to 2nd grade to 3rd grade, the elementary level, it's easy because it's simple division. You had 100 kids, divide by 5 teachers, 20 kids per classroom. Now you have 80 kids, simple math. You divide by 20, you get 4 teachers, simple. Once you get to middle school and high school, it's not that simple because you have to focus on core subjects.
Program.
And even if we were to cut 2 teachers, you're looking at, what's the numbers, like 22 kids per class versus 18 kids per class if we kept 5 teachers. 18 kids per class isn't ridiculous. It's not like we're gonna have 10 kids per class if we keep 5 teachers. Like it doesn't make sense.
And they're bumping back up in 2 years.
And if you look at the
Yeah, grade
trends that
three's
coming
at
up,
90 right now. I don't know the trend from kindergarten on that group, but,
But second grade
But-
currently has 5 classrooms.
yeah, we were already pumping them back
Third
up in
grade
lower
is going
grades.
4. Correct. And
No?
third's going 4.
Is third grade going to 4?
what's that?
Third grade is going to 4 classrooms next year? Yes, because the current second grade is 4. But next year, the third and fourth graders will both have 5. Current second grade is
yeah.
5, current third grade is 5.
How many kids are in those classes?
I don't remember.
I think 2 years from now, when you have small classes in all 4 grades at LMS, we could look at reducing staff and maybe sharing staff across grades. But right now, you still have 2 pretty large classes at, well, next year you'll have 7th and 8th grade being still pretty big, and 4th and 5th and 6th being smaller. It's tough. When you get to it where you have maybe 90 kids across all 4 grades, then you could maybe look at staffing and sharing across
Right.
grades and stuff like that. But right now, where it's not, it doesn't make sense. I don't think. I think we're being penny wise and pound foolish.
I was thinking with the reduction in a teacher is gonna change the amount of time you're still teaching the child. So
Who's going to
what-
teach? Like, who's going to teach that subject?
So is
though?
it the who that we're concerned with?
No,
They still have
it's-
the same amount of time, so I don't understand that we're just,
They stay the same amount of time, but a teacher can't be in 2 places at once. Is the problem? Like if say, for sake of argument, say a reading teacher goes away, you still only have 4 teachers to teach 5 core subjects. So who's doing it? The teacher can't be in 2 places at once.
again, I think it depends how the schedule's written. That's part
Aren't
of
you,
it.
are you merging, based on what I'm seeing here, reading and language arts, so basically reading and writing are 2 separate classes today?
Currently or next year?
No, today, there's 2
Yes.
separate classes.
There's 2, yeah.
So you're gonna add them, you're gonna merge them together under 1 teacher, is that correct?
And then have science, social studies.
But, so worst case scenario, let's say science, social studies, and math does not do a very good job on their content learning process. We don't expect that, but let's just think that that could occur. Will this class that's teaching the reading and writing, will they be able to keep the kids up to par and up to speed?
In the content literacy class? That's the goal.
I understand it's the goal, but what's the I mean,
I don't know.
how hard is it to take, I know we're merging 2 classes here.
Yeah.
And we're gonna put them under 1 teacher and stuff like that, and,
It's gonna be 4.
and so I understand there's difficulty in that. But based on the staff that's going to be doing that, are we comfortable that the staff that's going to be doing that is skilled enough to be able to handle that process for
I
these
mean, I'll put it
kids?
this way, John. I've been in the middle school 18 years. The staff amazes me every day. So are they capable? Yeah, they're capable. They can, if they have the professional development time, which I think is a very critical component to this, then they're going to work hard to make sure that those curriculum competencies and indicators are addressed through the content literacy class. They are experts in their areas, in their content areas. I have full confidence in that. So
Okay.
in terms of implementing those competencies and indicators into that, it's a lot to ask, and it's a lot of professional development to make all that, make sure that that's being implemented, in addition to a one-to-one model in 5th grade. But, yeah, I mean,
Well, I mean, the
I-
board made decisions in the fall, in early winter,
Yeah.
that sort of we were heading in this direction, so it's kind of hard to,
yeah, I just want you to see, I mean, I was asked to put it out there, so I want you to see what it looks like on paper. And you can see both models here, because you know where we are now with 5 teachers in grade 5 with language arts and reading.
but how do we know that content literacy is being taught in math, being taught in science, being taught in social studies? I mean, how do you monitor that all of that is occurring, so that the kids, so based on what the school board's decision is,
Yeah.
you have a bad hand or whatever hand. So now you got to figure out, this is the hand. Now, how's the best way to implement it and monitor it? Because we really don't want those 5th and 6th graders to feel any impact.
Right.
Because, we can come back and say, this is what the difficulty was to the next school board, and say, we need these teachers back.
Yep.
Okay? But the argument wasn't there not to make the decisions that the school board made earlier.
Yep.
Now it sounds like there may be, but that's kind of hard to reverse that process without
The argument wasn't made
stealing
by,
from. Well, I mean, if this had been delivered to us in November, then the argument is, why are we making those cuts? But it's after the fact, and I think it's after the fact because the school board was concerned that we had made decisions that we knew were going to impact the middle school, and I was sort of trying to make sure that a plan is in place that, based on decisions we made, that is not going to adversely impact the 5th and 6th grade class.
So, I guess with all due respect, I will say, I think I've been talking about the per student cost. I've been talking about the middle school model, the content specialist. I've been talking about that for a couple of years now, and that it's where we are in our achievement right now, which I think, and again, it's not perfect. There's areas we look at over and over again. But just in general, I think we're proud of where we are there. And then with that delta between the state average and the middle school, Litchfield Middle School, I think that is a hard delta to sustain over time. So to answer the question about content literacy, absolutely, it's going to be, every teacher would be teaching their specialist area with those content literacy competencies embedded in that separate section.
But if I'm the science teacher,
Yeah.
and I've taught my science class this way for a dozen years or 5 years or
Yep.
6 years, but now I need to add content
Yep.
literacy into that. So where does that direction come from, or is that training for all of those teachers that needs to make that so that they can seamlessly make up the? Because basically, in all intents and purposes, we're losing a class, a teaching class, for 180 days, and now we got to try to spread that teaching class across all of our other classes. I think that's correctly what we're trying to do, is spread those minutes into all of the other classes and not impact everything else.
In a separate section, though, we're not. So there's still 45 minutes or whatever the amount of time is for science, dedicated time, math, science, social studies. When you look at the ELA competencies, the intent of some of those competencies around ELA are, so for example, research. All right. So the ELA teacher in one section every day cannot possibly go into depth on all of those competencies in one block a day. So now the team has to look at those competencies and say, how can I integrate research, this competency, into that content literacy section that I have? In addition to my science class, how can I integrate that into that science content literacy class? Likewise for social studies. So, so the ELA competency is still addressed, but it's done in a very different way than it is currently. The other thing is that we'll have to look at is our resources in Visions 2.0. A lot of those resources are intended for a 90-minute block of ELA every day.
Well, you know my thoughts on 90-minute block for the middle school.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. So, but that we have right now. So
That's 2 45-minute ones.
Well,
Right.
whether or not you have a 90-minute class in the middle school and you take a break after 45 minutes for 5 minutes
They have a
and come back.
20-minute attention span.
I've taught in both models.
But then they go to another class. What do they have? Just
After
what
90
for
minutes,
prep-
they'll be like,
I don't understand how you can say that, Liz. They're in a class.
I
for
teach
40
middle school.
Well, they're in a class for 45 minutes. Are you saying that for 25 minutes they sit there and don't learn anything?
No, you have to
That's what you
completely
just said.
change gear and put on your actress hat and get them all
Developmentally-
riled up again.
90-minute, and I assume you're talking about a 90-minute block. uninterrupted block.
Yeah.
90
But you
minutes
can
for a fifth
break it
grader.
up.
Yeah. I've taught in both models, and there's pros and cons to both, but I absolutely felt that for the middle school age student, and actually what I hear from parents over and over and over again, they come in as, new fifth grade parents, not really sure about the whole middle school thing. Their kids are turning into monsters and what's going to happen over the next 4 years.
Next stage.
One of the most positive areas of feedback I hear is, and we got rid of recess a few years back, is the movement during the day is really good for their kids. That movement, the class to class stuff. So I think you can probably go back and forth on pros and cons to both models. I think particularly we're talking about fifth grade here, mostly fifth and sixth grade. I think that the more movement, just in my experience, the better for those kids. But
Well, I won't be here to sit at the table and listen to this for the next year, but, I don't think the goal of the board was to handicap the middle school, because I don't think we ever got an argument against making these necessary cuts. Maybe I missed that meeting and whatever, but,
I think Tom's been very vocal about the fact he didn't want to cut 2 teachers over the past few years. He might not come out and say it exactly like that, but he's alluded to it.
well,
In
none
my
of the-
personal
none of the
experience.
board members spoke up about not cutting them. We had numerous meetings through.
We've had discussions for over
On
a year,
this?
and I think Tom's known this is coming for a long time. 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, when we should have cut a fifth grade teacher at that time, and you stood up and talked to the budget committee and more or less gave a reprieve for 1 year. And I think after that is when you knew it's been more than a year that we knew this was coming down the road. So you mentioned like November and we've known it way before then. And it comes down to dollars, but it's just, how do you make it work? Is the biggest question.
yeah, I will say that again, with due respect, I have been, I think probably Superintendent O'Neill is tired of hearing me say over and over again about that per student cost piece, because I've been talking about that for multiple years now. That delta has not really changed. And I have been talking about the middle school model. You've heard me talk about the difference between an elementary and a middle school model with content specialists and content areas that become much more in-depth at the middle level, because we're transitioning to even more depth in high school. So, something, when you reduce and you have a content model like we have right now, and you reduce one content area, something has to give.
But let me ask you,
In terms of the model, it's going to be a different model.
So, thinking outside the box, can you look at your schedule during the day? I don't know all the answers to try to solve this problem. But I do know that there is hour issues with 7th and 8th graders that hopefully can be addressed in the coming year with the teachers. And this may be a chance to totally revamp, an opportunity to begin working on totally revamping the middle school model and schedule and stuff. Because there's a whole conversation that the board is going to have to begin undertaking to decide what is the best model for their students, so that they're then in a position to then talk to the LEA as contract comes up in the coming months. But if you don't have that discussion and you don't begin putting ideas outside the box from across the whole spectrum of the middle school, with the idea of that, the fact that snow days, if we wanted to go to an hour, just on this, if we wanted to go to an hours-based teaching model, we can't do it because of 7th and 8th grade. Because they don't teach enough hours. They have 16 hours. So 2.5 days of school missed, and now what do? We keep everybody else around because of 7th and 8th graders. Not because of elementary school, not because of high school, because they got plenty of hours. 5th and 6th graders have plenty of hours. So this is an opportunity to fine tune your model of the middle school and get it outside the box and find a way to enhance that whole learning experience. I mean, I look at this, and as the kids go to 7th, we're here from 5th and 6th, but I look at 7th and 8th, and I go, if a kid takes band or chorus, they may not get any of the unified arts classes because that's a full-time class. So, and Spanish, you have that as a unified arts, but in 8th grade, I think we were looking for all of our students in 8th grade to be taking either Spanish 1 or exploratory Spanish. But you have it as a unified arts thing, but it's got to be part of their schedule.
So I can speak to that. So first of all, as I said, I speak with all kinds of different schools, principals, the whole gamut. I'm pretty well aware of many ways to schedule a middle school. Martha and we've talked to the content teams. We've looked at a lot of different ways to do this. However, the most important piece to this is the curriculum competencies and indicators, and making sure that we have people. There's a lot of moving parts. When you get to 7th and 8th grade, you have highly qualified status and you have certification that is paramount. In order, I fill out surveys every year for the Department of Ed as to what the status of certifications are in those areas. So that becomes a critical piece. In terms of the UAs next year, and I left this out actually, to address that point about the band and the chorus, we are looking at, we will have an opportunity next year to provide a period, a unified arts class for kids who are not right now in that rotation because of band and chorus. It is going to allow us to do that with our unified arts team. So we are looking at those things, and that is an area, that's one of our biggest areas. I have to thank Martha for that because she did a lot of work with some of the UA teachers and just her scheduling brain to come up with that. So those are the kind of things we are looking at. And we're well aware of those kids. There's other groups of kids that don't necessarily get the entire rotation of unified arts. So that really was one of our first priorities. So yeah, those are things we're well aware of and trying to address. And like I say, I look at it, it is an opportunity to do that.
And I think that, I also think that the kids moving into 5th and 6th grade are very much prepared coming out of the elementary school, and they're getting a lot more exposure to a lot of different things that allow the teaching process to be faster, more focused. And I mean, I understand people say that kids can't sit for more than 45 minutes. They can't sit for more than 45 minutes in high school. I mean, I won't give Joshua a hard time, but they want to get up and stretch. They want to walk around. 45 minutes is a long time, even for adults to sit and do nothing. Not do nothing, but sit at their desk for 45 minutes. It's a hard thing to do, and when they're young, it really is a hard thing to do. But you know what? I think the teachers are able to adapt to that and find the exercises or whatever to get them through that process. I think this is a great opportunity for the middle school. I think it's a time I will use the words. No, I won't. It's an opportunity for a whole new process in the middle school to occur, and I'm excited for you guys because I think that you can put your name on it, and I think with the new leadership coming in, I think it's going to be a great opportunity in all three schools, and I especially believe it's going to be a great opportunity for your middle school. And I understand what you're going through here, and maybe a year from now you'll be back and you'll tell us why this was a bad idea, or you'll come back and say, you know what, this was a great exercise and this is what occurred from that exercise. And it still was a bad idea, but this is what we learned from it. And come back and the next board can decide to add the positions back based on the information they have. But, you know, my biggest challenge and goal is that nothing should change for the 5th and 6th graders as far as their learning and the learning process for them. And I think I think that's going to be a true challenge.
How can
for you
nothing
and your
change if we
teachers.
cut 2 teachers?
What?
How can nothing change if we cut 2 teachers?
Well,
And how is this an opportunity?
well, it is an opportunity. Well, it's an opportunity it's an opportunity to challenge the process.
So Derek, going back to the
It
question.
is.
So going back to the question I asked before. Going back to the question I asked before, and Tom, I'll ask you, just so I understand and the public understands. Right now, you have 5 classes in 5th grade. So that means the math teacher teaches 5 classes. Next year, they'll just teach 4 classes.
And the content literacy makes 5.
Well, no, hold on. So they're just gonna teach 4 classes of math. That means they have 1 class that they're not teaching, right?
They're gonna be teaching writing for their content area. They can't teach
Okay, but
literacy.
each one of the 4 teachers though is gonna have that same thing. They're only teaching 4 classes, not 5. So why would they be missing anything? I must be missing something here because I'm seeing still the same amount of teaching hours from a teacher, but they're just gonna be teaching another class.
Well, that was my question. Right now, they have 45 minutes a day of language arts and 45 minutes a day of reading.
So
So 90 minutes a day,
Yeah.
which is what they get at least in 4th grade. Are we cutting that instruction time down to 45 minutes, or
the
is
ELA
it still 90
class
minutes a day?
specifically it would now be a 45-minute block instead of, you no longer have a language arts and a reading component to ELA. It becomes a 45-minute ELA period.
So then we're cutting a
Combined.
reading teacher?
Well,
Or a reading or a
I
writing
can't speak
teacher?
to specifics on,
Okay, well, all right, I know
So
what
I,
you're
There's-
saying.
I guess what I don't understand is the content literacy a separate 45-minute class, so in math, for example. So Mrs. Zingales would teach math, 4
classes.
classes of math, and then how does the content literacy fit into that day? Does
Because her
she would have
fifth-
like 1 class of kids getting math literacy.
her 5th class would be the math content literacy class.
And the kids would
It would rotate, so
That's, I guess that's what
your
I'm
question
missing
might be,
now. Yeah.
how would
So
they
it
rotate?
rotates. Oh,
So
okay.
when we did this before, it was a quarterly rotation.
Yeah.
And that's probably logistically and for communication to parents and just
Okay.
students on their learning. Quarterly is a model that works pretty well because you've got some fluidity
Okay.
to it.
So they would still be getting 90 minutes a day of reading and language arts, but it would be taught, the reading piece would be taught by the content specialists.
The
By science, social studies,
Yes.
math.
Yes.
Yes. So
yeah,
they're still
the
getting the same
literacy,
content.
so we've got to pull those ELA competencies
Right.
out and embed those in the content literacy. In the content literacy class.
They're not getting the same content though. It's new content, right?
Having
It's
to
not
do
the same
with their
content they're getting
subject.
today. Yeah. Where today you have a class focused almost exclusively on writing, right?
Right.
And then a class exclusively on reading.
Literature or whatever, yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're
they
just
team,
saying-
they team.
Literature's gonna
so
stay the same.
I can
Sure
tell you,
stay
the
the same.
reading and the language arts teacher right now, they partner on their planning and they spend time together looking at like I say, the Envisions 2.0 resources they're robust and the intent is 90 minutes just on the Envisions 2.0 resources.
Studies.
No, in 5th grade it's, not
Envisions is
Envisions,
math.
I'm sorry, Journeys.
Oh, okay.
For
Journeys.
reading, ELA. So the journeys, they're designed for 90 minutes and there's a lot to them. There's digital components and things like that. Quite honestly, right now, they have to determine what is the most meaningful resource that I can implement in my classroom because there's so much to it. Even in the 90 minutes, it's a challenge. So now that content specialist in ELA is going to have the 45 minutes for just that. And then the content literacy class will address some of the areas that are in the ELA curriculum guide around things like research, informational text and writing, as Liz said, a site like Newsela or a resource like that would have to be a very important resource for that.
Might be interesting to do little content literacy around science and social studies where you have to go out and, if you're doing it between reading and writing right now, probably the focus is probably more on an English basis. If it's there, but now they're gonna have to do one with science, so now the science teacher will have to come up with something and where the kids are having to do their own research and writing and stuff on that for science, which I know that'll be very beneficial when they get into high school. And even after high school, when they move into college, when they have to, whatever career path they're taking, they're gonna begin to learn how to develop, papers and things like that. So again, I still believe that, I think it may be tough, but I still believe it's an opportunity, for the students and the teachers to explore exciting new opportunities.
I think we're talking about 10, 11-year-olds that still need to develop their reading and writing skills, personally.
So how many kids will be in the class if we have 5 teachers with 80 students?
At 90, well, no, it's not 80 students. The next 2 grades have 80.
Sixth grade next
Is
year.
80
Next year has 80 kids. That will be 16.
Oh, yeah, so at the
17
6th grade,
kids.
you'd have 17 kids, but the 4th grade coming in is 87, so you'd have 18, 19 kids
And there'll
in
be
class.
24 in the 8th grade class. People will be mad.
Well, that was gonna be my next thing.
I-
I'll be the first one to say it. Start thinking about 7th and 8th grade going forward too. And I say that because you're not gonna sit there with the budget committee and say, yeah, our 7th grade class can have 15 students per class.
No, I say
Then the following year,
once
your
these
eighth
smaller
grade
grades
class
get
can have
into
15.
7th and 8th grade, then you can start looking at reducing staff and sharing staff across the grades. Like in 2 years, when we have 80 to 90 kids in every single grade, then you could look at reusing a ELA teacher across maybe 2 grades
Yeah.
and sharing. But right now, the numbers it doesn't work. We're literally cutting like courses from the students
And
versus
reading.
reading and writing.
We're cutting writing, not reading. Well, it's not writing. Well, there'll still be a reading teacher. There'll still be a literature teacher, but the writing part will be taught by Mrs. Zingales, for their subject area.
Yes.
Am I understanding this
But no
right?
offense, I'd rather have Miss Engels teaching math and
Right,
Mrs.
yeah.
Love
Yeah.
teaching science
Right.
and like
Yeah.
True, but at the same time, we also
We
like to
all
have
hate
25
word
kids per
problems.
class,
Let's
rather
be
than
honest.
15. And it's board policy as far as class size.
Yeah, but
What is?
we currently
Class
have
size
5.
is board
We
policy.
currently have
What about
80
high school? We have
kids
kids.
in
We have
5th
10.
grade.
We have kids in.
You have
10
8 kids in
classes in high
5th grade right
school.
now, and it should be 4 teachers. And we
I-
had
you
that
know-
argument last year. It should be 4 teachers right now. It's a luxury having 5.
It's different though. You can't compare it to elementary school. If you did that to the high school, we'd have 20 teachers in high school. Like, you can't just divide it like you do elementary school. Because in elementary school, you have one teacher teaching the same kids for all day long. It's not the same model once you get to when they're older. They specialize.
That's why I think there is that delta right now between the Litchfield Middle School and the state average. And
Yeah. We're spending
I think that
$1,300
most
less.
middle
That's-
schools,
Well, it's gonna go up next year, because
so-
you're talking 22 students, that's $295,000. So if you take out the cost of teachers, you're probably gonna be adding 95,000 to your average, so it's gonna go up a little bit.
A little
no,
bit.
if we reduce 2, it's gonna go down. Our per student cost is gonna go down.
It's gonna go up.
We're talking about 150,000
22
dollars.
students at 13,000, you're saving is 295,000.
But if we reduce 2 staff, that's
It
gonna.
doesn't cover, it's not, it's less than 295,000. 22
I mean, it's
students
not-
at 13,000 is 295,000.
I see.
But the delta's like 600,000. Or no, how much is the
Well,
delta?
it
It's a
doesn't
little,
matter.
it's a
So if you remove,
500 and something.
if we remove the 2 teachers that we've budgeted for, it's only $219,000 that's coming off the payroll. Because that's how we budgeted when we put those
There's no way it's
positions
not.
in
We're talking
kindergarten.
maybe $140,000, which is 0.5% of the budget.
What, 2 positions?
Yeah.
It's more than that.
And we can always ask the next superintendent to find those 2 positions, right, Jim?
Could.
Or Cory.
I mean, I realize that, I'm kind of like drifting.
Asleep or?
Couple of thoughts. We've had time to think about the fact that we've had reduced enrollment in the middle school. And Tom and I have had those conversations over the last 2 years. And at RMS, we have one class that is declined enrollment, so we don't need the extra teachers, so we're cutting a teacher at RMS. And it seems to me...
GMS.
GMS, I'm sorry, GMS.
Use it.
GMS. You know, what Tom's presented to the board tonight is a plan to meet the goal of reducing staffing by 2 staff at the middle school. And what I'm confused about is that at the same time, it seems like ELA is one of the top priorities at the middle school. And I'm confused, Tom, to be quite candid, as to why we're cutting our top priority as opposed to looking at across all teaching positions in the middle school and saying, are there prioritized positions that aren't as critical as that ELA and math position for preparing students for the high school? So I'm confused by that. And I told you that when you gave me a document, and I'm still confused by it.
I think I've heard conversations through the budget process about how these reductions were arrived at, and all we've really talked about tonight in terms of the reductions is class size and number of teachers. So where I know what we're looking at is reduced, I mean, that's the presentation, is reduced enrollment. We're looking at reduced enrollment in the 5th and 6th grade. So that's how we came up with 2 positions to begin with at the middle school, was based on declining enrollment. So there's, I mean.
So, taking Jim's thoughts, just because I think I understand what you're saying. So if ELA and reading are so important, why aren't we trimming unified arts positions to make sure we have what we call regular content? Why don't we trim out in unified arts positions so that it can be in the regular content, because you think that's more important? So if ELA is as important as everybody's making it out to be, and I believe it is, then unified arts may not be as important.
I don't think that, based on the conversations we've had through the budget process, I think that the rationale behind these reductions is based on class size and number of teachers. So
No. The budget school board voted to remove 2 positions out of the middle school.
But
we didn't remove any position out of the middle school. We didn't pick any and say that's the position. We said 2 positions out of the middle school. X amount of dollars out of the payroll in the middle school is coming out, $219,000.
I was going to say that's how the budget committee sees. They just see it as dollars.
And how you juggle that around to make it work.
Yeah.
And if there are regular content classes, and their important is 1,
Yep.
they take over unified arts. Now, I wouldn't mess with band or chorus, because you may get in a lot of trouble, but you may have to think that says, you know what, I'm not going to have music and library. You said you didn't want to have them teaching library. So maybe library as a semester class goes away, and you find a whole teacher in reducing a full semester of unified arts, and you move that position. You remove that position, and then you keep your regular content position, because that's what is most important.
my concern with that is that the 2 reductions the number 2 was arrived at based on numbers in 5th and 6th grade.
Yes,
Those,
I would agree, but it wasn't.
So
we're removing a 5th grade position, we're removing a 6th grade position. We knew that we were going to be instructed by the budget committee to cut 2 positions out of LMS. We never identified those positions. Budget committee did. School board never did. School board's comments have always been, we need to remove two, I think, and there was a pair position that was coming out also. But 2 positions. Where those 2 positions get cut from, or how they come across as a reduction, is less to the administrators.
They have 80 and 5th right now.
And I would imagine that that based on what you're hearing from some school board members and based on your own report here, that regular content, reading and writing as an individual class is much more important than any of the unified arts classes that you have presently for 5th and 6th grade. And so the cuts are tough, one way or the other. You're either going to have 5 teachers teaching 5 subjects and reduce unified arts, or you're going to have 4 teachers teaching 5 subjects, and you're going to have a full staff of unified arts.
My concern, though, is that because of how the numbers are being calculated, I mean, I've heard the conversations over the last several months, it is based on ratios. So when we come back to the budget next year, these same conversations around student class size and ratios is going to come up, and in addition to proposals to cut unified arts programming, which I think is integral to the middle school program, there's going to be further reductions based on ratios, because that is the driving force behind
But
the
you-
two. It's
you can't-
the 2 grades.
You can't, first of all, you don't know what the makeup of the budget committee will be. And even if you do what the makeup of the budget committee, it's like throwing darts blind, okay? So you can't manage by what you think the budget committee is going to do, because you don't know what the next school boards, how hard the next school board will fight for whatever the issues may be. The next superintendent will have their plans. But in this case, if regular content, we as a board we knew that yes, the budget committee was going to say to us, based on school board ratios, you're going to lose a position in 5th and 6th grade. We understood that. But we never removed those positions from 5th and 6th grade. We removed 2 positions at X amount of dollars out of LMS.
John, I think that's on us then.
Yeah.
I think we have egg on our face for allowing just numbers to drive our budget decisions and allowing the budget committee to push us through this. We allowed that to happen without a solid plan of actually how it's going to be implemented and how it's going to affect children. And that's, I think, on us and not on Tom.
And I don't think it's a bottom line budget. The budget committee will say that over and over again. We present them with the budget, they cut dollars out of the budget. They don't cut positions. I've heard it time and time again.
Yeah.
So, this plan as it stands, I can't support. I don't know if we can come up with another plan. The other issue with cutting UAs is those teachers teach 7th and 8th grade as well.
They teach all.
They teach all of the grades. So
There's one gym teacher.
It's the middle school has X amount of dollars to run and process their school.
That's not true. The district has X amount of dollars
Yes, but
to run.
but we allocate out of that X amount of dollars to the middle school, the high school, the elementary school, and all the other places. It all ends up in that. And the plan here is a difficult plan. Unless the school board, the next school board is going to immediately go into their budget and make drastic cuts across the whole budget to refill these positions, then, and that's fine. They can easily do that. They can take money from maintenance and they can, wherever they think they can find the $225,000.
Or the budget fails, we have plenty of money.
What was that?
Or the budget fails and it's not even a
And
problem.
we don't have a problem with that. You will have the funds there. But,
well, here's my question. We have 87 kids coming into 5th grade next year. If we get, you said it was 92 to keep the ratio. So if we get 5 more kids coming into 5th grade, we need 5 teachers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So then then that's a moot point.
Yeah, if you need 5 teachers, you just add it back into your budget in the fall.
So this is next year we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
those kids are coming in next year. So with 87 kids coming in next year, and 28% of them have special education needs, which really, really concerns me about cutting reading and language arts instruction with that many kids who need extra supports. Okay, I forgot what I was saying. So that's 17 kids per class. That would be in 5th grade, right? I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if we can add that money, we find that money in the budget. I don't know.
Corey can find the money.
Yeah, you can find it, right, Corey? But this plan is not what's best for kids, and that's what we have to focus on.
I mean, I think that based on, we've had these conversations. Martha and I have looked over a lot of different angles on this, and I was asked earlier if we can fulfill this plan and meet the needs of the students, and I wouldn't bring a plan to you that I didn't think we could meet the needs of our students. So I don't want that to get lost. This is after a lot of looking at different things, minimum standards, which affect unified arts and instructional time and all of that. This was the best plan, and this is why we've had a content literacy reading model in the past. So we're going to get the job done, no matter what the model or the numbers or we always have. So I have no lack of confidence at all in the staff that we have to get that done. It's a challenging time with our numbers. So I don't want that to. What I brought tonight was what we felt was the best plan, and it'll get the job done. We will make sure it does, and I think that performance over the years, regardless of how we approached it, scheduling wise or programmatically, has been solid and consistent, and it will continue to be.
So one of the lines in your proposal stood out to me. It's the high achievers technology and the struggling learners tier 2 RTI are minimal, are lacking altogether. That really struck me.
Mm-hmm. So one of the areas that is a challenge for us is, for example, we don't have a math tutor right now. And our reading specialists, a lot of their work is with identified kids. So, in an ideal situation, so we've got creative. We have, thankfully for technology, we have some programs that are able to meet the needs of some of these kids. But, that's an area I've put the math tutor, and I realize we're in challenging times with the budget. So that's an area that has not moved forward. But, those are groups of kids that I mentioned that earlier with the CHS model. We're constantly looking at how we can get creative and meet their needs, and we're going to continue to do that. I think we have to look at resources all over the community, which is why we're tapping in. So, and then the high achieving population, I think, a specialist around that group of kids, that area is ideal. We're not there, but I think that when we have the Learning Commons model at the middle school evolving, and more Project Lead the Way and more STEAM, we're able to get creative. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Just for budget purposes, tier 2 is considered general fund and not special education.
Correct. Yep. These are students that are sort of teetering around that proficiency area, a little below, usually below proficient, and we're just trying to target their needs.
Help them out.
Yeah.
Give them a boost.
Yep.
Okay.
Did you ever budget for a math tutor in your budget? No? I'm just curious.
Did we budget for
For a
it?
math tutor or someone
It's
to
one of
help
those
us
that,
have kids?
yeah, it was one of those that we put out, but then it was based on priorities in the strategic plan of the district.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Norman? No. Obviously, we still have a lot of time before anything's implemented, and if anyone has any ideas or thoughts, like, the first thing, not the first thing, but one of the things I was just thinking of, like, John was talking about unified arts, I don't know if there's anything we can do with the 7th and 8th grade class to help with the 5th and 6th grade, whether that be with unified arts or, I don't know, it is, I just don't know if there's anything the 7th and 8th grade team can do to mix in with the 5th and 6th grade.
I don't think.
I
you
mean,
wanna
our numbers-
mix
No, I'm not
fifth
saying
and
mixed
eighth
students, I'm not
graders.
saying mixed students,
Oh,
that's not what I'm
that-
saying, I
that's-
just,
That's scary.
This
I
is your
think we
cross
could
grade
look
levels?
district-wide. We still have,
Yeah.
we have not half the kids, we have much less kids at GMS,
Terrified of
and
it.
still we have full-time UA teachers there. Can those be used across other places and stuff
when we
like that?
talked about that.
Like that's, we have to look at it district-wide and not just focus on Nelmas.
Right, and I guess that's what I'm saying, as far as 7th and 8th, maybe, 'cause we've talked about that in the past. GMS, how many classes of 5 do we have now? We're gonna be
2.
just 2.
Is that right? There are 5 second grade classes and 5 third grade classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kindergarten's looking good.
I guess we could always ask,
Cutting one position, GMS.
Right.
Yep, second grade.
we can always ask, the superintendent if there's any money in CHS with, any low hanging fruit on small classes that could always be.
I just have to candidly say that CHS is not having a reduction in enrollment projected for next year. If anything, RMS is looking at maintaining their enrollment for next year.
GMS.
Ellen,
think-
GMS?
I mean GMS.
Still,
I think it would be folly to look at another building and say, well, we're not gonna cut the middle school, we're gonna cut you and you. I think honestly, I don't know where to go with the conversation, because it has been kind of understood, to me at least, over the last 2 years, that because there were declining enrollments at each of the buildings, GMS has lost, I think, 3 or 4 teachers over the last 5 or 6 years due to declining enrollment. Because there were declining enrollment, because the cohorts coming up into the middle school, roughly 30 fewer kids per class going into the middle school, so that over 4 years, there'll be roughly 100 to 120 fewer kids in the middle school than there were 4 or 5 years ago. And it was clear to me from both the school board and candidly from the budget committee that the expectation was that the next area that we would cut would be a reflection of declining enrollment in the middle school, and that would be where we would look. So we didn't cut last year because we felt that with only a single class in, that it would not be fair this year to make cuts. But we felt that once we had approximately 60 fewer students in the middle school, that we would have to find a way to offer excellent programs, but recognize the fact that we've got 60 fewer students. And did I look in a serious way at developing the answer to that question? No, I felt that was a principal's job. And certainly that may have been a mistake in terms of I should have had more hands-on, but I didn't. But I would be cautious to just say, well, we don't want to cut the middle school, therefore we're going to do this, and not recognize the fact that we can't rob from Peter to pay Paul. And that's all that I would say.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we still have more time to work on this plan and decipher as to whether or not is this the best approach to take.
It's almost coming to 90 minutes. I need to get up and walk.
Do you have anything else?
Just think,
So do you think,
the bell would ring in 10 minutes, get to go to your next class.
does anyone have anything else, Mr. Lecglider?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Did you want to mention, I'm sorry, what?
I think I'm on for the next item.
Oh, okay.
Are you gonna ask for money?
gonna give us money, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
This is, the board reminded me that the board doesn't approve things unless it's over a $5,000. So this is just an informational piece for the board.
Okay. So, am I up?
Yes.
Okay.
Still live.
Yeah, so as far as, Joyce Choate, beloved staff member at LMS, passed away this past year. She taught at the middle school for many years. She was our curriculum director for a little while. Had retired, moved to Florida. Anyway, passed away this year. A member of the family called me and wanted to make a donation to the middle school and asked that it was something. Joyce was very up on technology. She was a science teacher. And so I had a conversation with him, and he was very interested in something we've been talking about for a while, an information screen in the cafeteria. Much like at Campbell High School, when you walk in the entrance, they have the information screen in our cafeteria for our kids. So we can do that for just under $1,000. I've talked to Jason Pelletier. He's very much in favor of this, and we think it would be a great addition to our school. It's great for communication and just highlighting things that are happening in the school. So I wanted to bring that forward, that this donation is $1,000 in Joyce Choate's memory as a memory of her and her dedication to the district.
That's great.
Very nice.
You have that installed before the end of the year?
Yeah, I think next week.
Next week?
Awesome.
We're
Awesome.
good to go, yeah. We're gonna move forward pretty quick, so.
It's gonna flash like quiet too when you're loud or something, or
That's not in the
Cartoons.
plans.
Little rock video
Yeah,
to
some cartoons.
fire them up at lunchtime, you know,
Little hip-hop.
because they'll be
Yeah,
so
get 'em-
quiet.
get 'em
They'll be
ready
so
for hip-
tame.
Yeah,
there.
hip hop.
getting ready for hip hop.
That's right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you want to speak of the next item, Tina? GMS PTO donation? Which we already approved it, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we did.
Yes.
I wasn't at the last PTO meeting. I forgot.
What's that?
I wasn't at the last
Oh,
PTO
okay.
meeting.
I think the reason it reoccurs because
Because there's no snow?
the $5,000 threshold, we didn't consider that, so we just put it on there because you hadn't voted on it, but you don't have to vote on it, so that's why it's back on there.
Well, it is GMS PTO, as we mentioned, I think a couple meetings ago, it has donated 25 pairs of snowshoes and 5 pairs of adult snowshoes for the value of $2181.09.
Except in the 72 degrees out.
They need
Supposed to
some
get a
more
little snow
snow.
tomorrow, though. That's good. All right, that'll bring us to correspondence.
Did not have anything addressed to the board.
No, there were a couple of correspondence that I know came around, and not directly to the entire board, but just in the content of concerns of after the last incident in Florida. And just asking the superintendent, and I know also touching base with a few of the school board, just as far as looking at school security, safety, and I know Superintendent O'Neill sent out an email today, and I think touched on a lot of those areas. It's still ongoing as far as our process from our report from Homeland Security and different things we're looking at as far as safety and security for the students. Yep.
I know, I tried to highlight that. You know, we are constantly concerned about safety and security for students, and we're constantly looking at ways that we can get better. Tomorrow, the administrative team is going to meet and go over the ALICE training and finalize details. That's training for securing your building from any kind of events that might be occurring. I don't want to talk too much about it because I want to keep that more of a internal conversation about exactly how we're going to respond if some kind of serious event did occur. We don't want to give anybody outside more information than we have to. But if you're interested in ALICE training, you can look it up, and it's recommended as the best way to respond to any kind of intrusion into your buildings. And it's very different from the old kind of training that we used to give students, which is reminiscent of training where you just hid. That's not the thinking anymore. It really is not at all. It's much more active kind of response to intruders. We're also looking at, we talked about everything from making sure that we're doubling down on keeping all the doors locked when the children are in the building, and making sure that the custodians are checking all the doors constantly, as well as principals and teachers, and making sure that we do have secure buildings. And last year, the board, we did a complete analysis of the district by the Homeland Security Department in the state of New Hampshire, and they came up with a list of improvements to securing our buildings. And we put a bond article out there last year, and we did some significant improvements on making the main entrances of each buildings both more secure and also have more technology to alert people should there be some kind of an intrusion. And I know that the capital improvement plan includes other components in making our buildings more secure, and I know that we currently are looking at trying to get some state money, a grant money, to add to that pool of money so that we can continue making the buildings more secure. So we're looking at everything from locks on doors to procedures to policies to, we completely reviewed our emergency operations plan. We had Homeland Security go over that with us, and we've rewritten that, and we will be having Homeland Security review our document and then training folks as to how to implement the emergency operations plan. So we are very serious about safety and very serious about making sure that our children are constantly taken care of. At the same time, we candidly recognize that it's a whole community effort that's going to keep our children safe. And we would ask anybody and everybody in the community who sees something that kind of raises their eyebrows, contact the police or let your principal know if it's dealing with a child. And I would say that we all have to be vigilant to make sure that our children are as safe as they possibly can. So I assure you, it is a very top priority. Safety of our children always has been and always will be. And I appreciate all the cooperation we've had. No, that's all I'd like to say, Mr. Chair.
That brings us to superintendent comments.
I do have several comments, Mr. Chair. The school board did have some information about what the school board is doing, delegate resolutions. I'm going to leave that to the board to review. I think you have that information. We also, a quick update on Senate Bill 193, which is the bill which is going to allow parents with certain considerations. They have to be at or below 300% of the poverty level, and they have to have kids in your school for 2 years, to opt to send their kids to other schools and receive the state adequacy amount of $3,600 per student. I am really concerned about that bill. I'm really concerned about the fragmentation, the disarticulation of public schools that's going on currently in our country. The real look at an open enrollment model for the state of New Hampshire that I don't think serves anybody well. And I know that it is projected that it will become law. I know the House has passed it. I know it will go to the Senate. I suspect it will become law. But I do have some serious concerns, and I would ask us all to keep our eye on that bill and see how it impacts our children. It's not just the money that I'm concerned about. The money is significant. It could be significant. There is a clause in the bill where if you have more than 1/4% of your students who opt to go to another school, there is some money that will come back to the district. But to be candid with you, the long term, it's not the money that bothers me. It's the fragmentation, it's the disarticulation of public schools that allow open enrollment anywhere you want that really bothers me, because I think, as I stated to the Superintendent's Association a couple of weeks ago, there are two major roles that I've always visioned public schools as having. One is academic, and we have the responsibility to make sure that we give every child the kind of intellectual knowledge they need to be very successful in whatever the environment is when they graduate. And certainly it was very different in 1950 than it is in 2017 than it will be in 2050. But it seems to me public schools have always had a second mandate, and we sometimes don't talk enough about it. And it seems to me we are a very diversified society. We continue to be a very diversified society. And the second mandate of public schools has always been to socialize children, to bring children together from wide variety of values, wide variety of people, backgrounds, and bring them together into the American melting pot, which I would suggest is public schools, and have them get to know each other and to work with each other and be able to understand and appreciate multiple views and to come to an understanding that it does take an open mind that looks at various points of view and examines the facts before you make decisions. I fear that we're continuing to walk down the road of polarization in our country, polarization in our politics, and then if we allow the children to be fragmented into many different schools, I fear that the kids will go to the schools that are polarized and the other children won't get to know each other, and I don't think it's good for our democracy. So I think in the long run, our democracy is at risk by actually the more that we fragment and polarize our public schools in the district. So that's my big fear, and the money is important in the short term, but in the long run, I have concerns for our democracy. So that's a little bit of a rant, but that's my heart. I would like to bring to the attention of the board, the governor is sponsoring, in conjunction with the community college system, a opportunity for high school juniors and seniors to take 2 STEM courses in the community college system for free. And they would get college credit for those courses. And those courses, the community college system now has courses that transfer to other schools. I can speak directly about that because I think a lot of you know my wife is involved in Nashua Community College. And oftentimes they will have juniors that transfer to the best schools in our country. I know of full scholarships to 3 Ivy League schools that students who are second year community college students finish their junior and senior year in Ivy League colleges and only had to pay for the top. Well, they had full scholarship and they got all of the credit that they had earned in their freshman and sophomore year, their first 2 years in the community college transferred. And I know that course transfers to UNH, U Lowell, and many other institutions of higher learning. So we have an opportunity through the governor's program to have our juniors and seniors take 2 courses in their junior year and 2 courses in their senior year at a community college, which would be fully paid for by the state. There would be no cost to the parent. And then if the child gets a C or better, those courses would be college credit, and we would dual enroll them so they would also get high school credit for those courses. And it's a fabulous opportunity. If you took 2 courses each year, that would be 4 college courses you would have behind you, and you could, if you really wanted to, you could even take additional courses for $150 a piece through the I can't remember now, not leadership, I'll think of it in a minute, through the Running Start program. So a child, in theory, who wanted to take college courses could take 3 college courses their junior year and 3 college courses their senior year, and essentially would be entering college as a sophomore, probably maybe not a sophomore, but certainly a second semester freshman. So what I would ask the board is if we could fast track this. I will get you the information this week, and we will have to have a policy that we would agree. We already have a policy about taking courses in the college. I think all we really have to do is make very small changes in it and mention the STEM program, the governor's program, and the Running Start program, and I think we'd be fine. And then we would have to sign an MOU with the community college system. We could also offer courses at Campbell if the courses, if the faculty member was a faculty member. I believe they have to have a master's degree in an area, and then they would offer a course at Campbell that would be the same course offered at the community college, and the community college would provide an instructor, a professor that would overlook the courses being offered at Campbell. So there's dual enrollment possibilities, and there's also the possibilities of having students concurrently enrolled. And either way, we would give our juniors and seniors the opportunity to take many courses in the STEM program. That would be all the math courses, science courses, technical courses that the community colleges offer, or we could actually teach some of those courses at Campbell that our teachers might wish to participate in. So I will send you a little bit more information, and I would ask that perhaps at our next meeting we could vote on the policy. It's really not a big change, and you can review the memorandum of understanding agreement, and I think you would agree that it is something we should jump all over and get involved in. And then by next fall, we could have students from Campbell going to, we already do have, I believe, 5 or 6 students that take college courses at either Nashua or Manchester, but this would just open the door a little bit wider. It would give them free college courses in STEM programs, and also allow us to really expand some of the areas that we can't offer that the community colleges can.
So would these classes be considered honors and AP classes?
We would have to have a more discussion about that, but I wouldn't want to speak. I did share this idea with Bill at the high school and Jody at the high school, but we haven't had an in-depth conversation because I just want to move the ball quickly. If kids are taking courses where they're getting full college credits, I would find it hard to argue that they weren't AP or honors courses in terms of how they're treated for GPA and other purposes in the high school. But that's a discussion that the high school faculty and high school principal would have to have. And the board obviously would have to approve. So I just wanted to bring that, mention, I think it's a great opportunity, and I will get you the rest of the information about that. But if you're interested, you can certainly go online and look up the Governor's STEM program, or you can look up Running Start to get a little bit more information. So that's really great news. The other kinds of information I'd like to just review with you is the graduation dates. We've had snow days so far this year. And no, we've had 6 snow days so far this year. So we're looking at graduation on June 21st at this point in time if no other changes occur. And I'm trusting that Mother Nature or something will be good to us and decide not to throw us a curveball in February.
Who makes that?
Graduation's on the 21st.
Excuse me, not graduation. Last day of school is June 21st.
I think the high school just had a heart attack back there.
Last day.
I
I'm
can see
sorry.
the phones lighting up already.
I'm looking at this. Let me repeat that for everybody. The last day of school would be June 21st.
As of right now.
As of right now, with the 6 days of snow that we've already had. Now, keep in mind, 2 of those days were not snow. That was a windstorm that we had that we had to have no school because of electricity issues.
As of right now, LMS graduation's the 20th.
And as of now, LMS would graduate on the 20th. Now,
Eighth grade.
we've tried to look at CHS, and historically, the last 2 years, what we've done is calculate total number of hours of educational participation that the seniors have had. And we're currently looking at that data, and I don't want to put a date out there right now, but we're going to take a look at the data and see if we can graduate seniors as early in June as possible, but we have to be in compliance with state laws. So we'll be reviewing that data, and I'll probably be able to give you a much better answer in about 2 or 3 weeks as to what we're looking at for the graduation for our seniors. And clearly it won't be the 21st seniors. It will definitely be significantly before the 21st. The other piece that, the other thing that was asked was around the whole issue of code of ethics, code of conduct, and I did get a copy of the current document that's being reviewed. It has not been adopted. However, the state team that's been looking at a code of ethics, code of conduct for educators has come up with a finalized document that they are now having reviewed and read throughout the state, and you certainly get a copy of this, or call me up and I can send you a copy of this. But, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward document, and it includes a variety of different areas, and I'll just quickly, it's a set of guiding principles that articulate the responsibilities common to all members of the educational profession. It goes on, Principle 1, responsibility and commitment to the students. And then it goes, in fulfillment of this principle, the educator will interact with students with appropriate settings, etc. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Principle 2, responsibility and commitment to the educational profession and colleagues. And it goes into bulleting things like value, honesty, and established commitments, and recognize the possibility of impact and ramification upon a colleague's professional reputation when speaking about a colleague in public and private communications. And it lists other things. Principle 3, responsibility and commitment to the school community. Communicates with parents and guardians in a respectful manner which represents students' best interests. Commits to equality, equity, and inclusion of colleagues, staff, students, parents, or guardians, and other members of the school community, etc. Principle 4, responsible and ethical use of technology as it relates to students, school, and other educational professions. Utilizes social media responsibly, transparently, and primarily for the purpose of teaching and learning, etc. So this will be finalized, and I suspect it will be adopted by the state within the next several months, and it will then serve as a guideline for us in terms of what our expectations are for the behavior of professionals in the state of New Hampshire. So I welcome this. It's thoughtful. It was developed by a real good cross-section of people, Superintendents Association, Principal Association, Education Association, state legislatures, community members, and I think it will give us a good benchmark for looking at what our expectations are. So if you'd like that, we certainly can make that available to you. And I think that was the last thing that I had to report on, was just the task force and what the Commissioner's task force had been developing and has developed and put on the table.
I think you have one thing on the calendar you want to discuss also. PD,
What is it now?
the change in the,
Oh, thank you. The other thing that I would like to bring to the board's attention is, as you know, we lost our late arrival day due to a, what was it? I think it was a canceled day of school due to snow.
Yep.
Kidding, I know what it was. And in that late arrival day, we had planned to do some ALICE training for all faculty members in the district. So what I would like to suggest is that we reschedule that late arrival day to March 7th, and that we would have a late arrival day on March 7th. It's a Wednesday after vacation, and that would let us do the preliminary training that we have to do prior to the March 13th training, when we have the professional group from the ALICE training organization coming into the district to train all employees of the district and substitutes that wish to get trained, and we'll have participation by other members of the community who wish to participate. The police force, I believe, the firemen are sending over representation. So we're trying to get all of this training done for the community on the 13th, and we'd like to have the late arrival day on the 7th to better prepare and have people commit and fulfill their requirement to do the online training. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours of online training they have to do, as well as have activities in the school for training. Is that fair to say, Corey?
I think the late arrival day, the purpose of the late arrival day was to have an overview provided by an ALICE certified trainer. They did it at LMS. It was a Hudson police officer. At this point, it might be one of our own police officers from here in town who will do it, who will be certified at that time. The purpose of the overview is to basically introduce people to the concepts of the ALICE training and what they're going to see on the day of the drills, because it is the training is kind of intense, and we want people to be aware of what they're getting into when they come in for the training.
Right.
Jim, can I ask how you're gonna notify parents? 2 weeks' notice for some people is gonna be a huge inconvenience for people who have to get kids out the door. Do you know what, I'm just
He's
looking,
just gonna do it as a late arrival.
but still, for people like me who work, that it needs, you need to tell people sooner than later. Do you know what I'm saying?
that's
Like,
why we're telling you now.
it's still not enough time.
Well,
Well, I know believe me, I'm behind Alice 100%, but the sooner we can tell parents, the better.
we're up against the date of the 13th.
Oh,
because
they
that was
have
the
to
date
do the
that we had-
pre-training or it's
We had
not.
contracted with the ALICE group, and
Yeah.
we're contractually obliged to have them here. But we have to do the pre-training, and we want to do the introductory, here's what we're gonna do kind of training too. And we realize that for some people this may be an inconvenience, but we're hoping that, being that there's, almost 3 weeks, I think, between now and that date,
Emails, phone calls.
we'll put out a
Facebook.
blackboard.
Yeah,
Put a
awesome.
blackboard out.
Unfortunately, the weather is what,
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
The pre-training is an hour on the computer. Easy.
So we
The online
we appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it's time consuming.
I think if we give folks 3 weeks, if we get everything out tomorrow, I think we'll give them ample notification.
Is it a 2-hour training?
Training.
7th, 12th.
The overview is an hour to 2 hours when the certified trainer does it, and then the online certification, it was about an hour when I
Right.
did it.
Right.
And I hate to do it, but could we ask the teachers to stay, the staff to stay after school one day instead of doing a delayed opening?
What's PD date is just being replaced with the one that they didn't have.
They're gonna have the,
It's hard because the schools are all dismissed at different times. We want to try to get somebody else in. To be honest with you, could we? Yeah, but I don't think it's going to be something we can get done. If we had a lead time of 6 months or something, I think we could do it, but I think
Yeah.
right now we really need to allocate that 2 hours on the 7th in the morning to really focus on this and get it done. And I, that's what we were going to do. I think we just have to do it. And to be quite honest, given where we are in this country today, it's just something we have to do.
No,
I
I
agree
don't
with that.
dispute that at all.
And
I know that.
As part of the program, you have to have 75% participation in the online certification, and I think we need to provide as much time as possible for people
For
to
people
get
to
it
do
done.
that.
So is that going to be, that's a change in the calendar,
No.
and I believe the board has to approve a change in the calendar.
I'll make a motion for
Second.
the 7th to be a half day, or 2-hour delay.
Second.
7th of
March?
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by
Sorry,
saying.
just 1 second. We don't have any other PD days already scheduled.
We have to
On
do
the
it
13th.
before
No,
the
between now
13th.
and the 13th.
Oh.
13th is training.
That's the, yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. I think it's too short term.
But we don't have any other choices, do we?
Nope.
There's gotta be other choices.
Name another day between now and the 13th.
so they're doing the online training by themselves, and then they have 2 hours for the pre-presentation.
There are
That's what we're
folks that
doing.
have already done the overview. That time would be provided for people to do the online certification on that morning. And for those who haven't attended an overview, there was a videotape of the one done at LMS that will be provided at LMS and GMS. And there, I believe there's going to be a live overview scheduled at CHS for people to attend that.
You gonna vote this?
Did Tina vote?
No.
You guys wanna like exchange a little piece of paper and?
No. I understand why this needs to be done, but
You know-
it's really a huge
You know, this
inconvenience.
is, guys, this is simple.
You would think.
I think, first of all, I think superintendent can arbitrarily just make the change, simply because it's for training for his staff, so I believe in our policies, he has the right to do it.
I believe so.
And if we need to, I will just tell him that he should just do that. The board should support this. I can't believe we're having a hard time getting 3 people to say yes, let alone
We're talking about
5.
delaying a school day with basically 14 days notice for people that have
So,
work and jobs.
Derek, out of
and-
curiosity, when it snows.
Oh, I
you give-
know,
you give
I
2
know.
hours notice.
I know, but like,
Well,
You know,
Tina, how do you wanna vote?
Aye.
Huh?
Aye.
Liz?
Opposed.
Passes 3-2.
and I hope we don't have anything important to vote on board today.
Look who's talking.
That brings us to community forum. Sure. Hi.
Janine, 43 Tanager Way. Before I talk about the LMS situation that I wanted to comment on, is there possibly a way that we could get some people in with our Before Care program and open it up to more people on that delayed opening? I know staff members will be involved in the training, but Girl Scout troops wanted to come, and
Who wants to come?
so I'm talking about the Before School program at GMS on this delayed opening in 14 days or whatever it was. Could that be opened up to more people if parents have difficulty finding daycare at a short notice? And it was just
That's a
some
private-
problem solving, but you can all figure that out. I just
I
thought
have
maybe
to-
there's resources to help ease that short notice problem for parents.
May I make a comment? I wasn't gonna comment, but I feel obliged to make a comment. The date today is what's the date today?
21st.
21st. The 7th is 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away from today. And I go back to someone's comment over here. If we had a delayed opening, I'd be making the announcement 5 a.m. in the morning. And people accommodate themselves to the delayed opening. So the question, usually the delayed opening is made because of dangerous situations out there. We don't want children, or we don't want cars out on the road slipping and sliding. So this is not a visible, tangible, I get my hand around and touch it. However, I would suggest to you that it is a very important decision to make, and that it really is not it's not ice, but we need to do it. It's important. It's serious. And so 14 days to me notice for parents, I realize it creates some issues, but a 5 a.m. call in the morning seems to get complied with by parents, and I know it creates some issues. So I just weigh the two together, and I don't see it. Be quite candid, I don't see it. Be quite honest with you.
To go back to what Tina said, the Alice training is extremely important.
I agree.
It's too bad it was delayed. Have the staff stay after school for 2 hours.
You what?
Have the staff stay after school for 2 hours.
Because you're running into sports and all the other activities that happen after school now.
I mean, the other option would be during February break, but I don't.
No, it is vacations and stuff both,
I know.
but have the staff for 2 hours. That'll be less of an inconvenience.
You have your 3-2 vote.
Yeah.
Can we move on?
It's passed. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. It doesn't matter. It's passed. But
So I wanted to just comment on the some of my thoughts that I jotted down about the LMS discussion. And I do have 19 years teaching experience, and I do have a kid at LMS and a kid at GMS. I don't know if this is a done deal, but cutting 2 positions in a school that very well may have numbers come right back up in a couple of years, I think is very short-sighted, and I think it makes for a poor work environment for the staff, if nothing else, but it's also not ideal for the kids. I think that with the Page Road development and a lot of other house turnovers we're seeing with older families moving on and young families moving into those houses, I think that a little bit of a longer-term planning would benefit. Class size of 18 is perfectly educationally sound. I don't even think it's small. I wouldn't even count that as small. I've had class sizes of 15 and 16. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. And to say that 7th and 8th has higher class sizes, so we should make higher class sizes at 5th and 6th, I think is a poor decision-making basis for making a decision. We don't make less educationally sound decisions for this group just to make it equally as unsound as the decisions we have for this group. You know, I think we need to do what's best for the kids, and I think that keeping those class sizes smaller for a little bit, I think that saying maybe Mr. Lechleiter will come back in a year and tell us this was a horrible decision, I think that's painful to me as a parent of a 5th grader, because my 6th grader next year will never get 6th grade back again. I don't think we can just gamble with her 6th grade year, see if it works out. I think we really need to be very careful about how we decide to work through this. And I do say that with tons of respect for what you all do for tiny little stipends. So basically a volunteer position, you have a lot of very difficult decisions and you grapple with them a lot, and I know you have the best interests of the kids at heart. So I just felt like I needed to share my peace of mind on that. Don't we typically have a surplus budget that is returned to the taxpayers? And isn't this a bottom line budget? Why are we returning surplus budget and then, I know I'm not a budget person, I don't get it, it's very complicated, but why are we returning budget that was approved by the taxpayer and then cutting teachers to have higher class sizes? I can't wrap my head around that. Now, if this is set in stone, if this is what's going to happen, I listened very carefully to Mr. Lechleiter's presentation about how that would work. And as Derek mentioned, reading and writing is foundation for every subject. And I think I could argue that maybe for every career, it is a foundation. They are foundation skills. In 5th grade, in the reading class and the writing class, they're both doing a phenomenal job, and they do very long-term, involved, higher-order thinking skill type of projects. I don't see how that can be crammed into 45 minutes. I think for such important subjects, and I know a lot of you agree with me, I just feel like I have to speak my mind about it too, but for such important subjects, I don't feel like that should be crammed into just 45 minutes. While I do appreciate the difficulty of the scheduling task that Mr. Lechleiter and Mrs. Thayer have in front of them and all the work they've put into it, I would never want to schedule any level school. I wouldn't want to have that job, but I am skeptical of the content literacy class model. Teachers who are not specialized in literacy, now I realize they're certified K through 6 or K through 8, so technically they can teach that class, but if they haven't been teaching that subject and they haven't been doing professional development in that subject, and that's not their passion and that's not their specialty, I'm skeptical about the quality of that course when they don't have a clear path and a clear program to model their class on. They don't have anything clearly carved out for them to model it after. Will that be graded? What are the competencies? What are the indicators? There's just a whole lot that goes into making that a valuable course that is rigorous and challenging enough to validate 45 minutes of my kids' time. Frankly, I don't want this to just be, we need to fill 45 minutes of their time. Let's just have this teacher do something with them. And with all due respect to those teachers, and I'm sure they could make the best of it. As an example, I think that thinking about the math literacy course. So the content literacy course taught by the math teacher. The obvious connection is word problems. And while I teach Envisions 2.0 and it's very language based, and I understand there are some language skills involved with sorting through what is the problem, what do we know, what do we need to know, what are our keywords. But so they can do some of that, but what they won't be doing is they won't be analyzing character motivations, they won't be comparing text, they won't be formulating and defending arguments to the extent that they do in ELA. They won't be making text to text, text to self, text to world connections. They won't be researching and presenting information. I don't think they can do all those things well in the 45-minute ELA block, and I don't see those things happening in a content literacy class. I don't know what the answer is, so I'm sharing my thoughts on it and my hesitancy as an educator and a parent in the district, but I don't know what the solution is other than keeping those two positions. And I know that that's a hard task, and I understand the enrollment problem, and I do understand GMS has lost someone every year for many years. I was one of them. It just seems maybe fair staff-wise if those cuts keep happening as the kids move up, but it's just a different model, and I think we need to take each year and decide what's best for the kids those years and not gamble a year away, because those kids in that cohort won't get that year back.
I'll try to answer some of your questions. I was going to interrupt you. I didn't know how long you're going to be going for. So I'm probably not going to answer everything that you touched on. I guess the first thing I'll start with is we're going back to a model that we had, I believe, 3 years ago at LMS. So we're going back to a model that Tom has been involved with in the school. I can tell you the average right now in the state of New Hampshire is 23 and a half students in middle school. That's the average of every school in New Hampshire. We're at 21 right now at LMS.
I don't really care what the average is, frankly, with all due respect. I care what is most educationally sound.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
At the same time, and then you talked about a bottom line budget, we are, as a board, also fiscally responsible to return monies that aren't used for the purpose they were budgeted for. So we don't just arbitrarily take money. Sometimes we'll spend ahead on projects that are already in the budget for the following year, but to just take monies to spend them on something that we want is not our responsibility. It's not our monies to play with in that way.
But isn't it a bottom line budget?
It is a bottom line budget, but at the same time, we don't expend, that'd be like us going out and, I don't know, buying a building with money that was never purposely used or meant for that reason. So
that money was for educating our
all the money
kids.
returned is almost always salaries and benefits, though.
Yep.
So it actually is that purpose.
No, it's not always salaries and
No,
benefits.
most of the time it is.
The money is for educating our kids, making the best
It's for
decision to
educating
educate them, and I
kids.
think that having
But,
teachers
and we also, as a board, have a
educate them.
policy as far as class size, and we try to follow that as much as possible. No different than when a class size goes up, we add a teacher. When it comes down to the point where it's at 15 per class in 5th grade, it's not enough kids to support 5 teachers.
I hear you.
And
I don't
also-
necessarily agree, but I
No,
hear you.
and also Mr. Leckler sat right there and said, the plan he's proposing is going to work. He wouldn't propose a plan that he didn't think they could work.
But as Derek pointed out, he was maybe
Of course he doesn't want
cornered
to cut,
into
he didn't want to
making a
cut
plan.
teachers 2 years ago, and 2 years ago we should have.
Sure. I also
He's-
think we
he's
need to
not gonna wanna
consider
cut-
that this upcoming 5th grade class has more than 28% identified special ed. And so we really need to consider the specific needs of this group that's coming And that's a really high percentage of special ed, and
It
I
is.
think to
One of the reasons
increase
we're
their.
asking for the new sped position also.
Sorry, what was that?
One of the reasons that we're pushing for the new sped
Right, I
position.
agree, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So, my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If they want the money, as long as they vote yes on kindergarten, they can always vote no on the budget, and we would have the money. I don't see that happening, but it's always an option.
Heather Dwyer, 31 Run. So there are 6 of you sitting on the board that I am either currently teaching your child or I have in the past. And I agree with Derek that the elementary school, it is a different animal, and at the middle school being, I get all nervous when I have to talk in front of the teachers. So it's just like a parent-teacher conference, and that's awful too. Parents with all the parents.
Yeah.
So, being self-contained, it is easier with the numbers when you see the decline to eliminate a teacher. Not that I ever think it's okay to eliminate a teacher, but we do specialize in what we do. You would never, ever want me teaching mathematics. It would be a disaster. This is, my passion is writing and reading. I am the 6th grade language arts teacher. Miss Medeiros is retiring this year, which means that next year I would take on both of those classes. Do I think I can do it? I'm going to try my damnedest, but there are a lot of standards, a lot of competencies that are within those 2 areas, and I have a problem with, we're moving to a standard or a competency-based report card next year, like the high school. And so Tom said that some of those competencies could be moved into other subject areas so that they're covered. Well, what does that look like on the report card? Because for me, I'm going to have a slew of competencies. And what do I rely on Mrs. Sidlow and Mrs. Langton and Ms. Durant to make sure that those are covered? And do I grade those on my report card? Because I don't have time in the 45 minutes to cover all the things that I need to. It's very concerning, seeing how this is the direction that we're moving in, and I just don't see how that's going to work. That's just a big concern that I have. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Nathan Cooper, President of the Litchfield Education Association. I didn't write anything down, so I'm trying to keep myself organized mentally. So I'm not up here to make any suggestions as far as where any of those cuts would go, because that would you'd be asking me to choose which member of the LEA I should bury a knife into. So I'm not gonna. My job is to represent all of them. For what my sense is worth, my sort of question or suggestion is, as we're moving forward in sort of planning long term, so much of the conversations were about enrollment figures, and as I said, the budget committee's looking at numbers, the board's looking at numbers, and trying to make determinations about staffing levels. But obviously, so much of the conversation back in October and November is not necessarily about where those specific reductions would happen at LMS. And that's certainly going to be different at LMS and CHS than it would be at GMS, because you're talking about these team models and different departments. So as we're moving forward, if it's possible that we could start, obviously during a busy budget season, trying to either plan or somewhat predict within the fall time about where those specific cuts would be. I obviously understand it's bottom line budget. The budget committee has their thoughts. We have, or you guys have your thoughts. And I realize that you're just shifting the conversation instead of the winter and spring up to the fall. But I think, to the extent that the teachers and the parents could have the opportunity to sort of weigh in on the pros and cons of those programs, perhaps extend the conversation that happened today. Because I think certainly, and I hope I'm coming off not condescending or telling anyone what to do, but perhaps if that's the model we can start to get into,
because as this cohort starts hitting 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and starts moving up to the high school, those are those programmatic sort of cuts that we're going to be talking about for years to come. So the extent that, my suggestion would be if we could have those sort of conversations in the fall, as difficult and time-consuming as they might be. And again, I realize we're just shifting the timeline of when the conversation is going to happen, because it could happen here. That would be my thought as potentially being beneficial, but I'm certainly not going to weigh in on which department at LMS ought to be cut. So, thank you very much.
Someone suggested CHS.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's not my job to weigh in on those specifics right there. So, for what it's worth, thank you much.
Anyone else in community input? Brings the school board comments.
So, today I was reading an article in the College Board AP exam statistics were released, and Massachusetts was #1. So of course I went digging and everything. In the country, as far as students, 32% of their students scored 3 or higher on the AP exams that were taken in May by the College Board, and I found information on New Hampshire, but I couldn't break it down by schools. So my question was, Jim, do you know when that information will be coming to our district? If Massachusetts already has it?
I'll have to check, John, give you a report.
Okay. Yeah, because it was interesting to see. I mean, I was, pulling out numbers and stuff. It was very difficult in the spreadsheets they had, but
when it comes to that kind of data, I think there's 2 important things. What percentage of students are taking those exams, and comparing schools where equivalent percentages are taking the exams, and then what are the demographics of the particular schools?
Well,
from a state perspective, I still would say what percentage of overall of students are taking those exams, and if it's a very low percentage that are doing well, it's one thing. If it's a very high percentage that are doing well, it's an entirely different piece of data. So let me see if I can pull that together for you for our next meeting.
If you go to the College Board,
Yep.
They had the information there. Maybe you're better at reading it than I was.
I don't know about that, John, but we'll get it for you.
Maybe someone can print you out a big spreadsheet,
You get that?
Anything else?
I don't know. Yes.
Anyone else have anything? I just have one thing, and actually it's a big thing. I want to announce that a decision has been made on a new superintendent. And as a matter of fact, I was with him this afternoon signing his contract, and Mike Jetty will be our new superintendent. Congratulations. I can tell you that he is beyond excited about joining us and very enthusiastic and looking forward to it, and I think he's going to do an excellent job for us. So we have a new superintendent.
I told everybody on Facebook.
We still
I
love
would
you, Jim.
post as soon as I heard. So I
So
gotta
as
do
soon as you
that
heard,
post right now.
you had no idea what
I'm
was
going.
going on.
I'm going.
Make
I'm
sure you
going.
tell them to When I wait put till that on the 7 while you're website, there. I've had about 30 people call me.
Yeah. Contract signed, right?
Well,
So we're good.
Again, it took a while where, number one, he was out of the country again. And we're going back and forth as far as with the contract, so we're able to sit down this afternoon and take care of matters.
You're still on the hook for a couple months. You can't go away yet.
Yeah.
I think Mike Getty, Dr. Getty, is going to be a really very good superintendent for Litchfield. I believe he's going to step in and push Litchfield School District forward, and I certainly am really excited that Litchfield was able to secure a superintendent as competent and as trained as Dr. Getty. So I'm excited about the fact he's coming on board, 'cause I think he's going to really do a great job for us.
You too. And at the same time, I'd like to just thank the committee that went through the process of going through candidates. Also, the input we received from the public during the Meet the Candidates night, and feedback we received from the community. And it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, and especially the committee that put in the time and effort, it's greatly appreciated. it's a long process, but I think we get an awesome candidate out of it too.
As a testimony to how well the job was done, we had another district visit us today who didn't have a successful superintendent search and picked Holly, and Barbara was not here, but Holly and I sat with them, and Holly did most of the speaking because they're developing their search process based upon what Litchfield did. So certainly is a strong witness to the good job that was done here at Litchfield.
We have 2 sets of public minutes to approve, January 24th and February 10th.
Make a motion to accept the January 24th minutes.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. And we have February 10th.
Same motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. 5-0. That'll bring us to the BA report. The curriculum report, by the way, and the principal's reports will be posted on the website. They're not here this evening. So it'll bring us to the BA report.
All right, just to go through, quick updates. The budget deliberative session was on the 10th. So the warrant articles 1 and 2 as amended, and articles 3 and 4 that remained as written will be on the ballot officially on March 13th. So things have moved forward. They're in the hands of the voters now. Also on March 13th, as we've said, will be the Alice training drills at all 3 schools in our district. As Mr. O'Neill said, we'll be meeting tomorrow to hammer out the rest of the logistics surrounding the training and how that day is going to work. Also noting, I put in an application last week for the state infrastructure grant. Part of the DHS, the Homeland Security audit in FY16 noted having secure vestibules in each of our 3 buildings put in. We received estimates and I applied to have construction done at GMS pending approval of the grant. So just waiting to see if the grant gets approved. There may be 20% matching funds locally to fund the project, so we might be looking for $15,000 to $20,000 within our own funds to match the project.
So it will be like a locking little
Yeah, it will
cube
be.
hallway before you get into the
If
buildings
you're looking at the main doors,
at GMS?
yeah,
Okay.
those will remain locked at all times, and the entryway will actually be to the left. You'll go in, and it will actually give the office a direct line of sight to the people that are looking to gain entry to the building. I provided financials if there's any questions on those. I can go through those at the end. I've scheduled the FY18 financial statement audit for the summer. I'm hoping that process will go even quicker this year than it did this past year. And then I gave a list of RFPs that I'm working on developing for release over the summer for just different services, transportation, audit, and just general services that are done maintenance-wise for an on-call basis for emergency stuff. So. Also, we did have the food service. The state came in for the food service audit this past week. They will be compiling their findings and providing the district with a letter of their findings, in which time we will address those items as they come in. And I also have, for board review, I have the renewals for our workers' comp and property liability insurance that will need the approval of the board to be submitted to Primex. That's my report.
Really have anything for Corey?
So, right now we have $1.2 million
General fund, yeah.
general funds available.
Well,
How do you expect that to shake out?
I'm projecting around a $500,000 fund balance. We budget to return about $200,000, and we budget that in our revenue side. So
So where are we spending $700,000 on? What do we have left to spend on?
I'd have to go into the reports to summarize that for you.
Well, that
A
may
lot
be-
of it is, to Derek's point earlier tonight, it's a lot in the salaries and benefits we do.
Well, salaries and benefits is only 243,000 of it, so that leaves you $1 million. I mean, you've encumbered basically all your salaries and benefits and everything like that, so, based on your report here, you have an available balance of $1.2 million basically. And 290,000 of it is operational total, so I think that's maintenance and stuff, and 360,000 is under other totals, so I don't know what that is, but salaries and benefits made up maybe $500,000 that's left, so that would be the 500,000 you gave back. So I think just a better detail of where you think that may be headed.
And those numbers, the encumbered plus year-to-date expenses, the encumbered amounts adjust as you go. POs get paid, they get paid under the amount of the PO, so some amount gets released back to fund balance. So it is kind of, those totals in the expenditure column will adjust from time to time. That first report that I give is based on how I would present the audit, the financial statements, where the status reports would give the idea of what's left in the balances in those areas.
Obviously, there's a lot of money there, and I had asked for this report for a reason, but great job. Thank you for managing the money well.
Thank you, Corey. Yep. The next item I just put in for a placeholder because I realize that the board is gonna change, in another month or so. That we'll have at least 2 new members. But what I'd like to do is just get the thought, at least from the existing board at our next meeting. If you have any ideas or thoughts as far as for our long-range goals, for our 3-year goals, 5-year goals, before you leave. Realize also we're gonna have a new superintendent, so a lot of it's gonna be involved, but John, you've been on the board for quite some time, Derek's been on for quite some time, so I'm hoping that at our next meeting, that if you have anything that you'd like to put in, or at least suggest, that we can have a discussion as far as our goals for the next 3 years or 5 years. I didn't wanna have the discussion this evening, but I did wanna put in there just to touch base and, just food for thought and I'm certainly, we probably already have some ideas, but just so we can have a discussion around that process. And again, then with the new board coming in, some of those are gonna change, take place, but at least we'll have something to start with. Did you wanna talk on the capital improvements, John?
I did. So I asked Corey, and I thank you, Corey, for, I don't know if Michelle did it, but thank you.
Together for us.
Breaking it down.
Breaking this down for us. So, basically, this is sort of for the next board, so I feel good about handing this off, but, this is the stuff that, we believe needs to occur. And this is the stuff that we, believe needs to go out on you can either do some of it through end of your year encumbrances. You can ask Corey to create an RFP on it. I would, my suggestion would be that the next board needs to decide how they're going to tackle this.
I thought,
And-
John, I'm sorry, weren't these the items that, we were thinking more placing on the bond and the other items
Yes,
off
I
of here
was-
were the
I was
end of the
getting
year.
to that. Yeah, yes.
With the end of the year.
So, the mechanical, we didn't touch. We strongly recommend that an RFP go out on that. And if you incorporate all this other stuff into it. But I would strongly recommend that, this board, have this locked down
hopefully by the summer, end of the summer, as far as putting it out for bid, getting bids back. Because this is, you're gonna have to go to the, voters and explain it to them in a bond. And we need to make sure that we, are prepared to argue what the bond should be and why it should be and the things like that. The town just is gonna vote on a new bond for 20 years for the fire station this year, and we're going to go back to them next year for a similar bond for maintenance on the 3 schools, on stuff that needs to be greatly updated, specifically at GMS and LMS, and areas of CHS where we've had these buildings. We don't spend a lot of money on maintaining them. We spend money on keeping them from falling apart. And I think we have about a $2.5 to $3 million bond that is going to need to be requested. And so we just wanted to make sure that everybody had this information moving forward. At least 3 of you will need it. Hopefully you back us. And you're gonna have to make sure you handle it a little better than the bond that was handled this year.
So John, are you saying you're stepping down from the chair of the committee?
Well, I think that there's I don't have to step down from this chair for that. I mean, I'll be glad to help out on that committee. But it's back to the school board now, so.
John, was there any discussion about a long-term plan? How does this, and how does this, would this fit into kind of a longer term? Because even if we did, spend $6 million, bonded $6 million and brought everything up to code, it doesn't address all of the needs. It doesn't address the space needs that we have at GMS and LMS and, getting rid of the portables. So I think it's a good start. We do need to address these issues that are going on, but how does this fit into the longer term?
We did not tackle that question when we were doing these. And I think that's a very big question. I think that I think that there's probably I know the new superintendent when he comes in that Bedford built a brand new high school over there in Bedford, and I think he was on with that team, and I think that he may have some experience to help the next board through that process, because the bottom line is there's not a lot you can do with GMS. There's not a lot of room to add on to LMS. There may be a big space between the 2 schools to build, one school that's K through 8. There are a lot of towns that have K through 8. I don't know if that's what Litchfield is ready for, but I don't believe they're ready to build a new elementary school. But they have to fix their elementary school. And they, 10 years ago, they said no 3 years in a row. Or 3 or 4 years out of 5 years. I don't exactly remember, but I think the closest they got was under 10 votes one year of building a new elementary school. And so unless that's something that the next board would like to begin the process on, I still believe that you would be 3 to 5 years away from, getting the process, educating the town and getting the numbers and the justifications for approval on that. But you can't continue to allow the repairs at GMS or LMS not to occur, so,
And that was, if I can just jump in, John, I mean, on the committee, that was the biggest thing we looked at, is maintaining the building. And making certain that the monies that are spent right now are to have those buildings last as long as possible. One of the issues that is addressing here, and I believe it's $500,000, is the sprinkler system at GMS. So you can't build another room at GMS until you put a sprinkler system in.
Right.
So, I mean, that's part of it, if you think of expanding, but those are kind of things. Then, like HVAC, just items that are getting old, items that, I can't recall what school it is, John, they were talking about, like changing the breaker boxes, because there's no more room on the panels. They're at the point right now.
that was
that-
LMS.
LMS. So it's different issues like that throughout the 3 schools that we address, rather than consider planning like, okay, well, what's gonna happen in 3 years, 5 years? Are we gonna have a new high school, we're gonna have a new elementary school, a new middle school? It's just, the buildings we have right now is just maintaining them, and bringing them to the
And
point where they're gonna last longer.
And I think after all of this is done, as all of this work is done and the contractors that complete this work, the school board should request from them, what is the maintenance plan for keeping the HVAC and all the different schools, or the heating system, whatever it may be? What's the plan for the maintenance on this on an annual basis? And, have that information as documented, and then put it in the budget. Because I think that the biggest problem, or the biggest thing that we've always, whenever we've tried to put something in to the budget for maintenance on the schools, has always been, well, where, you know, where's it coming from? Well, now we have a brand new system, and this is what they're telling us that needs to occur. And so, you know, some of this stuff you could probably do with end of year funds. You know, you can knock $100,000 or $200,000 off of it. But the big stuff, you're gonna need a bond for. And, that's really the mechanical stuff, and, you know, if you go through and look at some of these items, with the electrical and stuff like that, it's, you know, it's, and maybe as you know, Corey was getting a grant for GMS, maybe even as he's doing that exploring, he may come across something that qualifies for a grant under this stuff. But you know, we talked about whether or not we should do a school at a time. You know, put a bond out for GMS 1 year, then the next year put a bond out for LMS, and next year put a bond out for CHS. And the consensus on the group was, you just needed to tell them they need to do it, and this is what it's gonna cost. It may take 12 months to get it all done, just because of the amount of work that needs to get done. Some of it may be able to happen, let's say it got passed in March, so the money becomes available on July 1st. Well, there may be some work that can happen in July and August, but it may need a full 3 months, or it may need, you know, the 2 weeks at Christmas, the week in February, the week in April, or it may need all of June, July, and August for the following year. But you know, the biggest key is we can't allow what needs to be done here to impact the day running of the school. And I think a lot of these things would do that, so it needs to happen, you know. You gotta get a bid, you gotta get it approved, and then you gotta come up with a schedule, a timeline of that schedule. And that may be something that happens along the time once you get all the RFPs and they give you time frames of what it's gonna be, so that when we go to the voters again, you can give them all the information. This is the timeline that we're having, and on this. But
in discussion with the committee and in discussion with, the company that did the work, we also felt like if we did it together, like if you had an electrician come in and he made a bid to do all the electrical work in all 3 schools, you may get a price than if you did it GMS, then LMS, then CHS in 3 different times. So, that was sort of some of the things that we were thinking about.
Good. Next we go into some job descriptions. Job descriptions.
Yeah, you have, I think these are the same ones that we've brought to you before and they reviewed, so it was just bringing them back to you for your last look. We haven't made the changes you recommended earlier, so I think it's really, unless you see something new, there's not much there that, we haven't changed anything, put it that way.
So we have 4 to approve.
Yes, what we're looking for.
So the first one is the reading tour. Is there a motion?
Motion made.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Next is the math tutor.
Move to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Tina. Third is Title I tutor.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained. And the last is the enrichment tutor.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second.
Easy that is. See how easy that is, Liz?
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Bring us to the manifest. Any questions?
You get 3 signatures?
I haven't seen it.
We didn't see it down here, so.
Let's open the
No,
manifest.
I'm not. I didn't sign it.
We haven't gone through them yet.
All right.
That'll bring us to public input. Hearing none. That'll bring us into non-public. RSA 91-A:311. Dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. The hiring of any person as a public employee, matters which if discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body of the agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.